Welcome back, everyone, to episode 40 of Gameday Tarps podcast. Today we have an awesome guest with us, John Keane from the Kamloops Blazers and Radio NL in Kamloops, BC. Before we get into it, though, we'd like to ask everyone to please subscribe to the channel and like this video, as it just helps us grow even more. But now, let's get into the interview with John Keane.
You're listening to Gameday Tarps podcast, coast to coast, with your hosts, Ryley, Dakota, Dallas, Daeden, and Wilbs.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 40 of Gameday Tarps podcast. With us today, we have a Kamloops Blazers and Radio NL sports broadcasting legend, I might say. John Keane, how are you today, man?
Well, far from legend, Ryley, but happy to be here and always willing to chat some hockey with broadcasters here and young guys from across Canada and especially Kamloops. Great to see there's like a local appetite for this. So let's get into it. This is great.
Absolutely, yeah. We're thankful that we've kind of had some great guests like Logan Stankoven come on to help grow us in the Kamloops market, and now yourself as well, and Colton Davies from Daily Faceoff, who we know you know as well. So we've been lucky that local people are really helping us kind of boost up a little bit. It's awesome. So thank you.
No problem. Yeah, happy to be here.
We have such a great hockey community here in Kamloops, BC. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I guess we can take it right to the biggest news lately in Kamloops, which was the 2023 Memorial Cup. Why don't we just start there and go over your experience covering the host team, maybe some of the people you got to interview for the first time, or the ownership here at Ginla, Doan, Sador, whoever was here, who you got to kind of interact with, and how you got to grow the Kamloops brand through your word on the broadcast for the Kamloops Blazers.
Yeah, Memorial Cup was an awesome event. It was my first thing, and after 20 years doing this, there's not many things left to check on the box as far as new experiences, and you kind of think like you've done it all at the major junior level, and then a Memorial Cup rolls around, and it was awesome. Like there was a lot of moments where that kind of caught me sort of like eyes wide open, like, holy man, did that just happen? Or just the support in the city and everything around the event. Obviously on the ice, you would have hoped that it would have went a bit better. I think the team took a tough blow when they lost Kyle Masters to injury in that blowout against Peterborough. And that basically meant all their D-men had to step up. There were some other guys hurting, through that entire tournament. As well, and ran into some really good teams. Like I think Quebec was heads and tails above everybody. Seattle, I guess everybody knew what Seattle was about after 4 regular season meetings, 6 more in the playoffs. Yeah. And Peterborough's, showed why they're a champion. They fight back from 4-1 down in that tiebreaker game to find a way. So overall, the event itself was great for the city. And, you would have hoped that with all the resources put into it, that it would have, maybe took the team a little bit further than it did, but no regrets. And now the team's in a bit of a little bit of a rebuild here, trying to get out of the assets that went into that team in the last few years before that. So that's where we're at right now as we get set for training camp in a week.
Absolutely.
John, I was driving into work one morning and the 7:30 news was on, and I heard almost a month ago, I think it is now, that you broke the news with the mayor of Kelowna that they are intending to bid for the 26th Memorial Cup there at Prospera Place. Now, for us locally, like only a 2-hour drive would be amazing to go witness another Memorial Cup within a 3-year time frame, which would be amazing for local fans here in the Thompson, Nicola, even in the Okanagan. So that should be pretty awesome.
Yeah, they're in tough though. There's 5 bids there, and they've changed the whole selection process. Like you almost used to do like a wink and a handshake as like the Kelowna Rockets with the board of directors who would decide that. But now it's the whole process where you're graded on your building, your assets, your team. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. And, I would put Kelowna somewhere in the middle of the pack of those 5 franchises that have been. And I know it'd be nice to go down there and see that, but I think they're probably right now, maybe I tend to think that Medicine Hat might be the front runner if they can get some of the off ice boxes checked there moving forward. But yeah, Kelowna had the shot at it. Let's not deny what happened to Kelowna here in 2020, right? Like, it's careful what you wish for. The Blazers wanted that Memorial Cup as well, along with Lethbridge. They didn't win that bid. And then you're pretty thankful that, you didn't win after that because of how devastating that is to go through the process, trade for a team, use your assets and then not get a chance to sort of host that tournament. So that's tough.
Kamloops could have built a, I don't know, maybe a more competitive team if they won that 2020 bid.
I honestly think 2020 was the team. Like, I think that 2019-20 season, like, let's be honest, this team was on a 4 or 5 year run. COVID killed 2 of those 4 years easily. And I think that team, you had a young Dylan Garand in goal. You had, a young Connor Zeri. You had Zane Franklin, who Dakota kind of reminds me of here right now here today.
Tazo, Onyebuchi.
Yeah, it was a good team. And the fact is, like, 2 days before the season was shut down, it was already locked in place. The Blazers were going to play Kelowna in round 1 of the playoffs. And all the motivation in the world, this team wasn't picked. Kelowna was. There was a chip on the shoulder of this team. They had all the elements. They were the hunters, not the hunted. And, that team was well coached, great goaltending. They could play any way you want to play. Remember, there was that big line brawl in January after the trade deadline with Kelowna. And for me, I look back on the 4-year window of the organization, and that might be the best team of the 4. It's arguable for sure, but definitely that would be my pick.
John, you did mention that Medicine Hat is potentially the front runner for the 26 bid to win. We know that Co-op Place is a very state-of-the-art facility. It's beautiful. What has been, as a broadcaster, to go into to do a play-by-play?
What are some away arenas you enjoy calling games in on the road?
There's facilities, and you think about, state-of-the-art and nice buildings, but for me, it's all about atmosphere. It's all about what can that building generate. When the Star Spangled Banner's sung, or "O Canada," and it, makes the hair on your neck stand up, and you get a little tingle feeling in your toes before face-off. For me, like, that's where I want to be. Like, that's, the environments that I want to call games in, and for me, there's a few. I think Spokane is a beautiful facility when it's full. It's fantastic. Yeah, nice. Spokane's a great place. If you ever go on a hockey road trip, I mean, if you want to do a little states trip, Spokane's hard to beat, for sure. That's a top building for me. I think a lot of those American buildings definitely bring a little bit more atmosphere than maybe some of the Western Canadian ones. I like Kamloops for me personally. I like, being in that rink, and when there's a big game and there's a big crowd on the line, I think that's up there as well. Some of these prairie rinks, I haven't been there lately when they've been full. Like, there have been more, smaller crowds and things like that. Edmonton is a bit of an exception because I think that's an exceptional NHL building. Yeah. How does it transpire to junior hockey? It's a bit different. But I think if you had a full house in there, that'd be pretty incredible. But even, it's funny, even like Memorial Coliseum where Portland plays out of, it's in a historic building, the Glass Palace, they call it. It's dated. It's like you're going through a time warp into the 70s. But when their anthem singer starts going and that building gets going, I mean, it's a pretty cool environment to be a part of.
What's your favorite moment all time in the booth, John?
Oh boy, guys. There's been a few. We're talking 20 some years, but I don't know how old you were for what we just call Game 6.
I was going to bring that up. I was there.
Yeah.
Bronson Mashmeyer.
Yeah, that was incredible. And if, not too many times you lose your composure, but it was kind of those mind-blowing moments.
Out of the goal. He'll spin in the far corner. Beat the blue line. Mashmeyer wants to fire.
We'll have to find
you
it.
could just get a sense for what was going on in that building. Elimination game. You were down 3-0 in that series. You're fighting back from 5-2 in the third. That was a top moment for sure. There's been lots. I just think about Logan Stankoven doing his thing and having the ability to to call his goals and his games as a local product. 4 goals against Victoria one night as a 16-year-old. I know we only have a bit of time, but there's been some awesome times here, some playoff wins. It's funny. Once the season is over, I tend to park it, not think about it very much anymore.
Yeah.
But in the moment, when you're getting to conference finals, when you're in Seattle and the guys force a game 6 or a game 7. I mean, there's just lots of moments where it's pretty cool to be in the battle, as I say, and some of those nights you feel like it's you and the guys against the world in some of these places. So it's pretty cool.
That brings me to another quick one, just real quick, John. I have my first gig next year as a sportscaster for a team up in Central York and for University of Toronto through school. But I want to know how you prepare yourself as a broadcaster for a big game.
You know what? It's if it's a big game, guys. Like honestly, I'm pretty nervous all day. If it's a playoff elimination game or a game 7 or even a big divisional matchup, like I know by the time it hits 6:30, the pregame show 7:00. I mean, it's showtime, right? Like I got to go, I got to perform as well. Like these guys got to perform, but I have to elevate to a level where I can portray the emotions of that game and the feel of that game through the radio. And it's almost like sometimes you feel like you're a bit of a stage performer somewhat. It's a great thing nobody's looking at you, you're just on the radio and things like that. But I get that element of it's time to go. The best way, Daeden, to prepare is to take away some of those nervous moments, is to be prepared. Be prepared
Right.
with your game prep. Be prepared. That's really when you think of why people are nervous, it's probably because they don't feel they're ready for the moment, or they're they feel like they're prepared. I'm more nervous, not for myself, but just for the team, for the guys, for the coaching staff, for our fan base. I love our fans. I want them to enjoy the game and win. My wife works for the hockey team, right? So Let's make no mistake, winning makes the world go round in sports, right? Like that's what pays the bills, right? So it's important. Some of these games, there's lots on the line.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
John, when you're not in the booth, you run an amazing podcast that I love listening to. It's called The Blaze. That's basically kind of what drew me into getting into doing a podcast of our own, Gameday Tarps here. Which what got you into being a sports broadcaster back in the day?
Yeah, the Blaze, we started that Memorial Cup year. I sensed there was an appetite for more coverage of Blazer hockey. I sensed that, our fans wanted more than just the regular 7 to 10 o'clock at night game and then the post-game report the next morning on the sportscast or the Twitter feed or whatever. Like I sensed there was an appetite for it. So we decided we were going to give it a shot. Just off the top of your head, you can think of a bunch of great guests you could land just through your contacts from doing the games for so long. And I thought, hey, let's do it. It's evolved a little bit. We're getting into season 3 here in about a month or so. It's just a radio broadcast. It's not with video here. I'd love to expand to that at some point. But I think the fans were an appetite for it. There was some sponsors that were willing to get on board. Like I'm sure you guys would love if you had like a title sponsor that would, help pay some bills as well. So, we had that ready to go, and it was just a matter of filling content weekly for the show.
Let's go back. I know, honestly, for me and Dakota, this is probably our favorite team. I don't know what it is for you, but let's talk about the special season that kind of some nobodies had for the Blazers who became somebody's. JC Lapon, Colin Smith, and Tim Bozon. Like the triple 100-point season. I think Bozon hit 98. He was just shy. Like, what was that like, calling those guys on a nightly basis? And they were just buzzing out there all the time.
I'm happy you brought that up, but I'm not sure how old you guys were for that. That was my second or third season in Kamloops after doing 10 years in Swift Current with the Broncos. And that was electric. Like I often go back, I'll go back because that team was undefeated for a long time. It was approaching like a record. And I think they tied the WHL record for longest undefeated streak to start the season. And I remember, JC Lapon had such a big October that we rebranded October as Liptober, we were calling it. And, that line was spectacular. They had some great depth. That was a really good team. And I think back to a big game they had at Edmonton. Edmonton was good that year as well. And I remember the streak was on the line. It was getting pretty late. I think they were up to 16 or 17. And one of their favorite referees was calling the game that night. The Blazers were down a goal. We were at the old Northlands Coliseum for that one before they moved over to downtown. And I remember the Blazers were down a goal. They were pushing, trying to tie it. And then with like a minute and a half to go, they were penalized for a penalty. So that's usually the kiss of death, right? You're trying to come back. Now you're down a man. And I remember it was Colin Smith and Lapon and these guys and Timmy Bozon. They just said, Brendan Ranford's on that team too.
Oh, so good.
And they just were like, screw it. We're gonna win this game. So they pulled the goalie just to get back to 5-on-5, and they scored with like 30 seconds left to tie the game shorthanded. And then won it like an 8-round shootout or whatever it was to win that game. And I remember just like big fist pumps in the booth. Like, I was jacked for these guys to overcome the adversity. And that was a really fun season. That led to, some playoff success. And really, I think fans in Kamloops needed a season like that after, going through some playoff sweeps and not having won playoff games for decades, right? Like it was a long time, and they came out of it with that group, and I think that group did a great job of turning things around.
And really, that started. You mentioned the goalie. The goalie of that team didn't turn out to be an NHL player by any means, but like just talking about Cole Cheveldave, that guy was a stud. The hair flick before every game, water bottle in the hair, like he was just a magnet out there. Every game he was so good. It's so sad he didn't go further because he had so many tools as a netminder.
Yeah, he had so much swag, like he really did. And I could see you being a young guy, drawn to a goalie, does the hair flip and everything like that. And what a great find he was out of the Alberta Junior Hockey League. Like they brought him in and, he took over the crease. And, I think you look at what do we all talk about now with goalies? It's size, right? Even though that's going back 11, 12 years now, he's an undersized guy, right? So it was always going to be an uphill battle to play pro, but, sometimes you can have a lot of success in junior as a undersized goalie. And, in special years, you need some pieces to kind of fall into place on their own that you don't have to like force, like be a trade. You just need some things to kind of roll your way. And Chevy was definitely a guy that rolled the team's way that year, which was really important for them.
So I'm a year older than your sometimes booth partner, Dan DePalma, his son, Bailey. I'm a year older than Bailey. So I played with Bailey. Dan was one of my coaches in midget hockey, one of the best guys. He gave me a shot. I got cut that year, actually. Dan then took over the team. He brought me back up, gave me a real chance to play. So super thankful to him for, believing in me. But let's talk about him for a minute. And again, goalies, Ingram, Garand, Ferguson, like the run he went on with these kids, he had a huge role in who they are today as pro goaltenders. And he really is one of the best in the league, if not the best, as we just saw. He went for Team Canada to be the goalie coach.
Yeah, and you know what? Dan's phone rings from pro hockey teams now and then too that say, "Hey, like, what are you doing? Are you interested?" and things like that. And Dan, he's a great other job, right? Like this is just his part-time gig. This is not what he does. And
I've ran into him at work.
Yeah, and he's got his family here, and you mentioned Bailey, and so we're fortunate to have him. I mean, let alone we talk about the skill set he brings in developing goalies, but he's just if you spend any time with him, you realize like just his character is elite, right? Like he's got elite character. Do the right thing every day is kind of his motto. And I like being around him. Like if I get a chance to not be on the bus and drive up for a game or go home with him after a game on the road, let's say from Langley or from Kelowna, like I'm jumping in and we're going to chat, because you always feel better about yourself after being with Dan DePalma for a little bit of time.
I got one more here about some of the older guys. The dying art But let's talk about the impact of three guys: Wrecking Ball, Mark Hall, Ryan Haynes, and then the impact of Jermaine Lowen on the Blazers. All three guys who were always dropping the mitts, always sticking up for teammates. Um, Obviously, Lowen had a little bit more of a top end skill than those guys when he was here, but still undeniable. Those three guys were energy bugs every night.
Yeah, so I'll start with Mark Hall. I just missed Mark Hall. He had moved on for my first year, my first season here. But I know him. He's a local guy. He's, sometimes at the Blazer Golf Tournament. So it's funny. Him and Hainsey are kind of running mates for a while there. They're friends, and Ryan Haynes was, like you think of it, everyone that plays in the WHL was probably a star at their lower levels, right? Like that's just the way it goes. And Ryan Haynes was like a gifted goal scorer. Like he had incredible hands, has incredible hands. He's still like the top scorer in the ball hockey league in town, right? Like
I played against him. We did. Yeah, we played against him last year. Dominating.
He's got himself in a little bit better shape. Maybe not his playing weight yet, but he's just he's got great hands. He's just gifted. And he was a goal scorer, in the lower levels in Bantam. He comes, into the WHL and has to sort of find another way to make an impact or be in the lineup. So, he becomes a bit of a heart and soul, grittier guy that's willing to drop the gloves and do whatever's possible. And it's great that, he's stuck in town here, and he's a bit of a folk hero. The fact that we're talking about him like a decade later, right? Like that says a lot about Hainsey for sure. So I'm glad you brought him up. And a guy like Jermaine, it was just great to run into him at the golf tournament here a couple weeks back, to see him for the first time face to face in a while. I mean, Jermaine was a project. Like he came in all arms and legs, trying to learn the game, learn systems. That was a lot for him to take in, and just hockey IQ, right? Like he grew up in Jamaica for 13, 12 years of his life, and then he's like trying to play major junior hockey and sign a pro contract, and it's crazy he did all that. It took a while for him to get that first goal. Like I remember his first goal. And there was a big cheer in the building, and then his 20-year-old season, he must have banged in 35 from the top of the crease on the power play, and use that long reach to, knock some home. And, I think about guys that made an impact in the last decade here. You want to do bobbleheads, right? There's the Logan Stankoven bobblehead, and then there's the Jermaine Lowen bobblehead, right? So next to Logan in the last decade, I'd probably put Jermaine as the next most popular player in the city for sure.
Agreed. I have that bobblehead. It's actually just right in a bin beside me here.
Yeah.
I think I remember there was a story about Jermaine. He got his first set of skates there and he cried. Not happy tears.
Yeah, because I think it's like, hey, when you grow up in rural Manitoba, like there is not much option to. I mean, you're from Winnipeg, right? But we're talking like, I think his community was probably a few hours from. He played for the Interlake Lightning of the Manitoba Rural Bantam League. I mean, this is a long ways away from. Yep. I don't want to say civilization. Like I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, so it's like either you're in or you're out. So I think his parents wanted to make sure that he had his friends, he had, good role models, and he grew up, doing something productive, and he made the most of it.
Yeah, and it's definitely cool to see him like come back to Kamloops every now and again. Just, I don't know, you just see him walking down the street here and there. I know I have at least. So it's cool that he comes back to his roots, I guess.
Well, he's hard to miss. He is a big load, right?
Yeah,
he filled out. Holy.
Yeah, he is thick. Like, and I was just thinking, like, you're a defender in the American League, and you're retrieving a puck back in your own corner, and you got, the J train coming after you. Like, you'd be looking over your shoulder. So, I think they appreciate him as a grinder. He's been asked to fight a lot at that level. It's not really what it's probably something he doesn't like to do, but does it because the role calls for it sometimes, for sure.
You grew up in Saskatchewan, and now you're in BC. What's the most unique place that broadcasting has taken you?
Boy, you know what? I used to go to every NHL draft when I was in Swift Current, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, Columbus, Ottawa a couple of times, Vancouver. I'm missing a couple other ones in there somewhere along the lines. But one of the coolest things we did was my first year here in Kamloops. You guys know the CBC, the Hockey Day in Canada.
Yeah.
You may remember that Kamloops and Vancouver were the feature game for Hockey Night in Canada, Hockey Day in Canada in Whitehorse. So I remember, being at the airport. It was a chartered flight. Vancouver Giants were all in the front of the charter. Then they came to Kamloops and we all loaded the plane up. And we all flew to Whitehorse and, spent 3-4 nights up in Whitehorse just taking that all in. And, Whitehorse is not a place I'd ever thought I would be. And, I left much better for the experience. And it was awesome just to be, Ron McLean and Don Cherry are right there in the hotel, and Lanny McDonald and all the special guests they had were, with you every night. And it was awesome. It was great. And I never would have expected to be, a feature game on a chartered flight to Whitehorse in my first year in Kamloops. It was pretty special.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
I guess speaking of arenas, this will be my last one for you. What was it like calling that game at Memorial Arena, downtown Kamloops, the old Blazers barn? I was there for that. What a special event. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it was cool, but from a broadcast technical side, like when I call games, I am a stickler for audio quality, our connection, and we had a terrible internet connection out of that building, as you'd expect.
Yes.
Being however old it was, and us trusting, the lines that we'd have a really solid connection. The city put in VoIP lines, like voice over. I don't know what VoIP stands for, but it's voice over something, and they were terrible. Like I lost the connection probably 20 times that night. So we're off the air. So you're trying to dial back up. You're trying to reach the station. Lo and behold, you got like a pretty big playoff game between two rivals down below you. So I didn't really get a chance to like soak that all in and feel the history of that, because I was battling
yeah,
all night long. So that was too bad. That was unfortunate for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I can just see, like, if that was me in a booth, I would definitely be scrambling. That would be stressful for sure.
100%. And now with the webcast, like we try to sync up with the webcast. So, radio and now we also provide the feed for the webcast, and sometimes our radio internet will go down, but the webcast from the rink is still going. So you're still calling the game, but you're trying to reach your operator back at the station, trying to get out of commercial and try to get back on the air, all while juggling the webcast to make sure the webcast viewers don't know that anything out of the ordinary is happening. So good luck. I mean, that's one of the most difficult things you can do when stuff hits the fan, for sure.
Has there been a really hard name for you to pronounce while you're doing play-by-plays?
You know what? There was a Russian in Calgary with a hitman a few years back. I was in Swift Current, and I just couldn't get like different Russian names have emphasis on a certain syllable.
Yeah.
Like for example, the goalie in the news tonight, Askarov, right? Askarov or Askarov. Like it's all the emphasis on the syllable, and I just couldn't get this one Russian's name. But my color man in Swift, he had it down. Like he knew what it was. He could say it. And every time this player had the puck, I would just tap him on the shoulder, and he'd just say the name for me. And it became a running joke. So every time he touched the puck, I would just tap the shoulder, and he would do it. There's been some doozies over the years. I try my best to make sure that I get the names correct, and I put a lot of work into that, whether that's talking to the other broadcaster or the PA announcer in that rink that night, just to make sure we're on the same page, because name's important to you, right? Like you guys think about this for a second, right? Like it's almost music to your ears to hear your own name, like Ryley, Dallas, Dakota, Daeden. Like I say that, and it makes the little endorphins in the brain go off, right? It's just human nature. So I want to make sure families listening, that I want to make sure I get their names right, and it's not wrong, because that can turn it into a negative experience rather than a positive one.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and your credibility can go out the window too. If you start saying these guys' names wrong all the time, nobody's going to want to listen
100%.
to you.
Yeah, 100%. And I find it almost disrespectful if you can't
Yeah,
learn how to say someone's name properly. I mean, the broadcasters are the broadcasters, but we're there for these guys. We're there for the players, right? Like they're the story, they're the game. You don't put yourself ahead of that. You don't, like know your role, check it at the door. And make sure you take care of the game. Like take care of the product, and it'll take care of you right back.
Awesome. Well, you know what, John, we really appreciate this. I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm still sticking to it. Kamloops Blazers, broadcasting legend. I'm not backing off that. Thank you so much again for doing this. We appreciate it. All of Kamloops has been listening to you for years. It's the best radio cast that we've had as a city. And again, we really appreciate you coming on. So we hope
Hey, I
you have a
appreciate
wonderful night.
time. I love the young guys getting excited about hockey and podcasting and broadcasting. Like, it's funny. Like I just had a young broadcaster who wants to be a play-by-play guy. He's a news reporter up in northern BC, and he took the time to wanted to reach out, wanted to set up a phone call with me, kind of like how you guys set up this podcast with me. And he followed up with it. Like you'd be surprised how many people don't follow through on things, right? Like it's, if you want it, it's there for the taking. You just have to show some initiative. And for guys that are showing initiative, I got all the time in the world here to try and push you guys further if I can. So thanks for having me tonight.
No worries at all.
it was a pleasure to meet you, John. Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to episode 40 of the Gameday Tarps podcast with John Keane. We very much appreciate him taking the time to come on our local podcast here in Kamloops. It's very much appreciated. Follow us at Gameday Tarps podcast on all socials. Give Daeden a follow at Blue Nose Hockey and Wilbs at Wilbs Puck. Without further ado, we can't wait to see you guys in the next one for episode 41 of the Gameday Tarps podcast. Have a great day.